Boss man will be here shortly. In the meantime, we're going to start our hearing on SB 166. And for a description, we have Revisor Reimer.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 166 enacts the Fostering Competitive Career Opportunities Act. And essentially, this bill removes post-secondary degree requirements from state employment considerations. So there are a number of definitions that you'll see in Section 2. Probably of note would be the definition for state employer. This bill is going to apply to basically the executive branch of state government. Section 3 is a portion of the bill on page 2 that sets out what the bill really does. So first of all, it requires that state employers determine the baseline requirements for applicants for each job posting, and those baseline requirements are not to include a post-secondary degree requirement except as provided in subsection C. So turning to subsection C, there's a provision that gives state employers the permission to require a post-secondary degree if the state employer demonstrates that such degree is necessary for the position based on specific skills that are required. And for any posting like that, the state employer must include information in the job posting that supports the necessity of the specific post-secondary degree that is required. There's also a provision a little bit further down on the page if direct experience may be considered in lieu of a post-secondary degree, the state employer is limited to requiring a certain amount of years for each degree that the experience would replace. 2 years for an associate's degree, 4 years for a bachelor's, 6 for a master's, and additional years for a professional or a doctoral degree. Section 4 on page 3 provides that no request for a proposal or other solicitation for any goods is to require any minimum experience or post-secondary educational attainment for any contractor as a prerequisite. There is an exception if the state employer is going to include in the request for proposal or solicitation a statement describing why the needs of the state employer cannot be met without that requirement of a minimum experience or post-secondary educational attainment. On the Senate side, they removed Section 5, which was in the bill as introduced. Section 5 was a provision for appeal if an applicant thought that they had been turned down because they did not have a post-secondary degree. So an appeal to the State Civil Service Board was set out in Section 5, and that was removed by the Senate committee. So that's what the bill does. I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for the revisor? Ranking Member Clayton.
Thank you, Charles. I am looking at the bill lines 12 through 16, where it just seems unusual to me because usually bills are fairly technical, but yet if we see that the sentence starts on line 12, many such positions have experienced a phenomenon called degree inflation, blah, 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 blah. That seems to be more of a political statement than legal, and is this normal? It just seemed to raise a flag to me, so I was just wanting to see what was going on here.
So that's not something that one sees often in bills, but certainly it's not, particularly unusual where a statement of intent or the intent of the legislature or the purpose of a bill is set out. And so I think this would probably fall into that category where it kind of sets out the intent and what the purpose of the bill is as far as the legislature and the proponents.
Yeah, that is, actually, I don't mind that. Understanding legislative intent is half the battle. At least they're clear about it. Any other questions? Representative Osman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at page 2 as the definition on lines 11 through 13, the definition of state employer. So first of all, it says, does not include any state office or officer, department, board, commission, institution, bureau, society in the legislative or judicial branches of government. Okay, so first of all, does that mean everyone in the legislative and judicial branches of government, and therefore we're only dealing with the executive branch? Or what is the criteria here?
So I think the description there pretty well covers the legislative or judicial branches. So I'm not sure why that language was used instead of just referencing the legislative or judicial branches. But just looking at that, and I'm not seeing an obvious exception. I think that's fairly broad language that would cover the legislative or judicial branches in totality.
Okay. All right. Also, so the Attorney General is under the executive branch, and I'm not one to say, attorneys themselves have an inflated sense of ego as it is, but you do require a law license to be a lawyer. So does this mean that if this were to pass, you could be hired as an attorney under the AG with 9 years in place of a doctoral degree, which is a JD?
Representative, I think that would be a situation where subsection C would probably apply. And I think it would be relatively easy for the state employer to demonstrate that the degree is necessary for the position. So there is that exception that's laid out in subsection C there that provides for situations where, a specific professional degree would be necessary for the position.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B in new section 1 on page 1, it says this act does not apply to positions for which a post-secondary degree is a justifiable necessity. So I think that would take care of the issues that you're having. Thank you.
Any other questions for the reviser? Seeing none, we'll move on to proponent testimony. And it looks like we have a Stacy Goober from the Cicero Action Institute on WebEx.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to support Senate Bill 166 in Kansas as it applies to removing degree requirements. My name is Stacy Goober, and I'm a visiting fellow for Cicero Action, which is a nonprofit that advocates for entrepreneurial solutions to public policy problems. Employers across the nation face a shortage of qualified workers, and Kansas is no different. State and local governments want to hire and retain the best workers for each job. Hiring managers often use a college degree sorting mechanism to help weed out applicants and streamline the hiring process. But college degree requirements often have little, if any, relationship to the requirements to perform a particular job. Removing college degree requirements for specific roles will help open public sector employment to millions of qualified workers and will help states find more qualified workers to fill vital roles and help increase retention in public employment. Nationally, more than 70 million Americans have valuable work experience but lack a college degree. About 60% of public jobs require a college degree, even though only about 35% of workers have a college degree. Thus, even for an applicant with every skill the state needs to perform the job, that worker is too often blocked from the job. As of about a month ago, February 6, 2025, the Kansas State Job Board had over 500 open roles posted. The nonprofit Opportunity at Work estimates that as of about a year ago, 53% of the workers in Kansas were skilled through alternative routes, meaning they are highly skilled individuals, but they lack a college degree. That means that half of Kansans are barred from many state jobs, not because they lack the skills to perform the work, but simply because they do not hold a college degree. Skills-based hiring means that employers hire qualified individuals based on their skills rather than degree. A general rule to consider is that the job posting cannot require a college degree unless the agency can justify the need for a degree in the posting itself. We know that workers often gain important skills outside of the traditional classroom through military service, through on-the-job training, apprenticeships, skills training programs, and many other ways. Kansas can ensure that these skills are reviewed and applied rather than merely hiring workers who make it through a generic degree program but lack any training applicable to the role. More than 25 states, both Democratic and Republican, have now acted through either an executive order or permanent legislation. At the federal level, President Trump signed Executive Order 13932 to require the Office of Personnel Management to remove college degree requirements from federal job postings and to work to implement competency-based hiring. President Biden doubled down on this executive order, and in May of 2022, his OPM issued guidance to help other federal agencies use skills and assessments as the foundation of their hiring rather than college degrees. Private sector employers are also beginning to follow suit and are standing up their own commitments to remove unnecessary degree requirements. It is time for states like Kansas to give more workers the opportunity to serve while also helping to address their own workforce challenges. By broadening the pool of workers who are qualified for public jobs, Kansas can expand employment opportunities for workers in their state, increase the number of skilled candidates working in the public sector, and mitigate talent acquisition and labor costs. Thank you for your consideration of Senate Bill 166.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for the conferee? Ranking Member Clayton.
Thank you, and thank you for appearing before the committee. I was wondering, because it looks like you guys might be the sole proponent, could you tell us a little bit more about some Kansas-specific stories so that this is a little bit more relatable to our state? Anything that you know about from Kansas?
So there's a number of different roles on the Kansas State Job Board that would fall under I can pull it up right now, fall under this type of I'm just pulling up your state job board right now so I can tell you exact positions that could fall underneath this opportunity. So generally, with this type of reform, and I'm on your state job right now, your portal, there's a number of different types of middle skilled roles that would fall within this type of reform. So to the point earlier, it wouldn't be the attorneys, for example, that are applying for roles. It would be different administrative assistant roles. It would be, I'm looking at your state job board right now. It would be for, it could be an IT role. I'm just pulling up to see. Basically what would happen is that you'd find a role, for example, like an administrative assistant. And that type of role never in the past required a college degree. But as it mentions in the bill, and just from knowing about degree inflation, over the last decade or two, suddenly this role that never required a college degree now does, just to weed out applicants. But the role of the administrative assistant doesn't actually require a college degree. It requires an individual to be good at multitasking and good at communications and good at Microsoft Office, for example. That's a role that tends to come up pretty often on the state job boards. I am looking at,
I do have a, yeah, so I know that you're seeing things on the state job board. I meant like, did any specific Kansan who didn't have a college degree or didn't have a master's or a doctorate or what have you contact you and ask that? I want like a personal story of someone who was looking for a job with the state and then couldn't get it because of their, lack of education or lack of like post-secondary, or postgraduate work. Any
absolutely. So
specifics?
I haven't spoken with specific Kansan. I was on a panel about 2 days ago and I spoke with someone from Idaho in this exact situation. I've
Idaho.
spoken with
Okay,
individuals
thank you.
from different states who have their what we call STARS, skilled through alternative routes, and have, because of this type of legislation, been able to find meaningful employment in their state and in the public sector once this type of legislation was passed.
Thank you, Stacy. Do we have any additional questions? Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you for being here, Stacy. Is there anything in Kansas law right now that would preclude a department head from changing the requirements for an administrative assistant in their own department that they are very familiar with?
That sounds like a question for the revisor or for research. Can anybody help us with that one?
Oh, I thought she might know.
In the meantime, while we look for an answer there, any other questions for the conferee? Stacy, you don't by chance have that off the top of your head, do you?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick thing here that I want to throw in. I just want to point out that this did pass the Senate, not that this is a stamp of approval, but it did pass the Senate 39-1. A follow-up question,
Yes,
Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. What Kansas stakeholders did you meet with in order to bring this bill to our legislature?
Stacy.
So we are an outside nonprofit. We work with a number of different states on passing legislation. I testified for the Senate, but I have not specifically worked with anyone in Kansas to bring this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I know we're trying to find the gotcha questions, but I'll just tell you, on a personal note, I've thumbed through this over the last 3 years as we hear time and time and time again that we are searching for bodies to fill positions and we can't do it. And I've looked through our job boards dozens of times looking at where I could apply my skills. And I do run into this problem. This is a very real issue. I've got a pretty decent resume, and yet it seems that higher education seems to be that one thing that everybody would like to have, but showing real applicable applications is a secondary thought. Before we let Stacy go, do we have any other questions for Stacy? All right, it looks like you got an answer for our question.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. So if I understand the question correctly, I don't see anything in the bill that would prohibit, updating a job posting. The requirements would need to be met for any update, but there's nothing that prohibits that. But it's possible I didn't quite understand what she was asking.
Thank you, Advisor Reimer. It's off the cuff. You're kind of put on the spot. So if we come up with anything else, we'll put that out for the committee. All right. See no further questions. Thank you, Stacy. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I'm going to pass the gavel to the boss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there anyone else here that wants to testify as a proponent? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone neutral or opposing this bill? All right, seeing none. We'll close the hearing on SB 166. Stand by, please. All right, so next on the agenda, we're going to plan to discuss the two bills that we heard yesterday. Charles, do you want to start with either one of those?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So just in numerical order here, maybe Senate Bill number 199. As a committee may recall, this was an act that changes the regulations or the statute a little bit pertaining to fireworks season, expands the time of that season, changes the licensing, the number of licenses, and makes some other changes to fireworks regulation in the state.
Okay, committee, questions for the revisor on what the bill does? All right, seeing none. We'll move on. Are there any amendments or discussion on this bill? I think we have one amendment, possibly, to change the effective date.
Okay, so if there is in fact an amendment to change the effective date, I direct the committee's attention to page 6, line 16, and that would just involve replacing statute book with Kansas Register.
That is correct, yes. Sorry, I thought I had requested that, but maybe not. So, no, I don't think this is for the purposes of a shell. This is actually to get it in place before the 4th of July starts. So, yeah. Right, exactly, right. I mean, just because the insurance chair is on this committee doesn't mean we have to make shells for him. All right, I need a second on that amendment. Seconded by, Representative Ward, sorry. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, all in favor say yes, or aye. Aye. All against say no. Your motion passes. Any further discussion or amendments on Senate Bill 199? Not seeing any, with a motion to pass as amended,
Yep, gotcha.
Vice Chair Turk.
I move that we pass out House Bill 199 favorably as amended.
Okay, seconded by Representative Sutton. All in favor of passage, say aye. All against, say no. Motion passes. Okay, Charles, what's next?
Thank you, Chairman. So House Bill 2392 was also a bill that the committee heard just yesterday. This involved the requirements for faculty for nursing programs, nursing higher education programs, and this set sort of a limit with respect to purposes for state approval of those programs, and that would be that the faculty possess nursing or directly related medical degree that's one level more advanced in the degree awarded by the program in which they are teaching. And additional or more advanced degrees would not be required for purposes of, state approval.
Okay, committee, as you recall, this was but a portion of a previous bill that we had tabled, and it's back to us now in its current form. So is there any discussion or amendments on House Bill 2392? Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee will be happy to hear. I did hear back from my wife on this, so we're good to go today.
Congratulations. All right, so Representative Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we.
Osmond, sorry, Osmond. Boy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
2 days in.
Just a quick question. So 2392, I guess the question for the revisor, if 2392 passes, would that have any interplay with the bill hearing that we just had, assuming that also passes into law? I'm just trying to figure that out now that we're addressing both simultaneously here.
Charles?
So, let's see, I don't know if institutions were specifically mentioned in that other bill as far as a state employer. Yes, institutions were met. So potentially it could apply, but obviously this is another example where, as was pointed out before, there would be certainly a justifiable necessity for a degree in this case, and the procedure that's set out in the prior bill in subsection C could easily be met.
Representative Osman.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass House Bill number 2392 favorably for passage.
Seconded by Representative Turk. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. Motion passes. Representative Poskin would like her no vote recorded. Okay, committee, I announced at the well that House Bill 2400 was sent to committee, and this is a bill that we had passed out once, and they didn't get to it, so it was stricken from the calendar, and so it was reintroduced and sent over. I'm told we do not need to have a hearing on it since it didn't change, and so we're going to consider House Bill 2400. And with a brief description on what that bill does, Reviser Reimer.
Yes, this is a bill about horses. So this concerns including trail rides as a ranching activity for a couple purposes. One would be to qualify for property tax purposes as agricultural land. The other would be to be included as agritourism for purposes of the state's program to promote agritourism, and also some in liability protection. So it would just add, as the committee may recall from hearing this previously, just ensure that trail rides would be included as a ranching activity within the definition of agritourism activity.
All right, any questions on what the bill does? Seeing none. Any discussion or changes to the bill? All right, seeing none. With a motion to pass out favorably, Representative Turk.
Oh, good job. Got me right this time. All right. I move House Bill 2400 be passed out favorably.
Seconded by
Jill.
Representative Wilcott.
Going around. Sharing the wealth.
All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. Motion passes. All right, committee, that's all we have on the agenda for today, and I think that's all the bills we have in the queue, minus the AIM-K bill that we heard that's still kind of in negotiations, and the bill we just heard today. We will meet tomorrow, and we're going to have an open discussion on the child care bill and the issues that might be there, might not be there, but we're going to have an open discussion, and we will include as many interested parties that want to come and show up and give us their 2 cents worth. So we'll see you tomorrow at 1:30.